क्यों?
Is the presentation visible?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, yes. Okay, very fine. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mute है ना? इसकी भी आवाज बंद ही कर दे. Yeah, welcome. Yes.
Yes, sir. A hearty good morning to everyone. I, Anshu Singh, MPhil Research Scholar, on behalf of School of Forensic Science and Risk Management, Rashtriya Raksha University, welcome you all to the 6th webinar of the First Dialogue webinar series. First Dialogue, which is Forensic Intellectual Research Scientific and Technological Dialogue, moves forward with the motto Ideate, Innovate and Implement. It looks towards developing and promoting new ideas, innovations, and conceptual underpinnings of the forensic science and range of allied academic disciplines. This forum aspires to involve all ranging from trio to seasoned professionals for sharing ideas from across the globe. So, beginning with the webinar, the guest speaker of this series is a renowned person in forensic document consultancy, Sri Mohinder Singh. Mohinder sir is associated with the field of forensic document examination for the last 44 years. Sir worked as a forensic document examiner in prestigious and heritage laboratories of Government Examiner of Question Document Shimla and Hyderabad under the administrative control of the Directorate of Forensic Science. He has so far reported more than 4,000 criminal and civil cases referred by various investigating agencies, including CBI, Government of Departments, PSUs, including banks, as well as by various courts of law, and tendered evidence in more than 1,000 cases. Sir is working as a guest faculty in the field of forensic documents and is associated with various training programs run by the NPA, CDTI, NICFS, public sector banks, and forensic science departments of Osmania University, Punjabi University, and BHU. He has also presented various papers in forensic science in All India conferences, seminars, and workshops. Sir recently participated in the 19th Wroclaw Symposium on Question Document Examination, organized in Poland in 2020. Sir, we are highly obliged by your presence here. Thank you so much, sir. So today, sir will be discussing with us about forensic evaluation of document dating methodologies, past and present. I now invite Sir Mohinder Singh to begin the lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. My dear friends, welcome all. First of all, I wish you all a very happy COVID-free New Year. Now, without wasting a single minute, let me start my presentation. As you all know, forensic document examination is a very fascinating and interesting field. It has been on the radar for the last more than 500 years, as far as I know, and thousands years before it started. So forensic dating is a field where we approximate or estimate the age when a document was executed or prepared. So these are the contents of my presentation. I have divided it in certain categories. First of all, general introduction, then principle of anachronism, approaches for document dating, and then different parameters of dating, like typescript, relative sequencing, handwriting, signature, paper, indentation, ink, and dating clues from other materials. Then I would highlight more on review of research work in the document dating during the last decade, and then real-time case studies will be presented in about 8 cases. So finally, difficulties encountered in document dating and limitations, conclusion, and suggestions will follow. Friends, aging is a natural process which affects everything sooner or later. And change is the law of nature. Everything changes with the passage of time. Handwriting being no exception. Then documents change their appearance due to natural aging and including the usual wear and tear, abrasion, physical handling, heat, light, humidity, etc., which contribute to their aging process. Handwriting too changes due to old age, injury, or illness as well. Hence, we are interested to study these changes as a function of time, draw their aging curves, and correlate the unknown and known documents to draw useful comparisons between them to have an idea about their dates of creation. we are interested to study these changes, then there are several methods that are being used or researched for dating documents, especially inks and paper. As a forensic scientist, it is necessary to evaluate different methodologies for their accuracy, reliability, and validity before their actual application to the problems at hand. Forensic dating involves the estimation of age of a document by studying and comparing the properties of the constituent materials between the known and the unknown. Friends, before starting the job at hand, we need to introspect ourselves and seek answers to what, why, how, and whereabouts our existing knowledge base are offering any viable solutions to the problem at hand. Uh, the usual questions that we have to introspect are what we know and how much we know or we can know about something or a document. Next question, of course, would be what we don't know and what we cannot know. And then what can be done to know what we don't know. Why we don't know, if at all we don't know. And then how and how much can we know that we don't know. Osborne has stated as far back as in 1929, it is as important to know what questions cannot be answered about a problem as to know their answers. Friends, usually asked questions about document dating relate to absolute certainty. And absolute certainty or definitely fixing of dates and time of any incident that has already happened is too difficult to conclude, even by those who are specialists in the field. Only reasonable estimation can be attempted. The real question that needs to be answered should be whether a document is actually as old as its date would indicate, or what is the probable date of execution of an undated document. Friends, from a single source, for example, ink alone, it's virtually impossible to determine specifically the exact or absolute age or the specific period during which an ink was placed on paper. We need to observe and evaluate evidences from other sources too for drawing conclusions in such cases. So this is the statement of Osborne, which is before you. Then Osborne has discussed in his book various questions that cannot be answered and those questions as well that could be answered. While discussing all those things, Osborne too concluded during his time that specific or absolute queries about age cannot be precisely answered by an expert, giving examples of questions that were usually asked by the people because absolute or exact determination of age is perhaps beyond the realm of human knowledge. However, several queries regarding the estimation of age of an entire document, its relative age with respect to another document, or the parts thereof, can be appropriately answered within a possible time period. And drawing conclusions like, is there an incident of backdating, or drawing conclusions about relative dating of two entries on the same document, etc. That can be attempted by using different methodologies like principle of anachronism that can be used as a forensic tool. Then friends, further we can date the documents approximately or relatively using the tool of relative sequencing. That is another approach to document dating. Finding different materials between the two or more entries means that they are related to different occasions, if not exactly the different timings. two ink writings may be shown to have been written on two occasions because a different ink or a different pen was used. Then friends, chemical testing, which is often most talked about, is to a mere guesswork, in the words of Osborne. Definite opinion cannot be based, since no reliable data can be derived from it alone. Then, friends, there are circumstances, those are inconsistent with the facts of the case. Those can be used to find the relative date or verify the date in which a document has been created or not. Here, it is interesting to see what Osborne has quoted. Purported youthfulness. Friends, over smartness like purported youthfulness or superficial appearance of age is often a symptom of fakery. And further, suspicious circumstances like alleged handwriting of a single individual, which is found on several documents, say executed wills, etc., that were executed 100 years apart, looks too good to be true, and hence it is a strong evidence of forgery. Further, subject matter and printed information which is contained in the document itself must be gone through. It may be a strong incident of forgery if there is inconsistency between the alleged and actual things. Friends, not a single parameter, but all the evidences that could be studied must be examined and evaluated for getting the dating clues from a document. The contents of the entire document must be evaluated. We may get some unconscious clues from them, which may be inconsistent with the facts and circumstances in which a document was produced. Printed information within a document may contain some dating clues like persons, firms, corporations, their chronological sequences, and even a post office cancellation stamp have a date identification value. Further, letterheads, there are telephone numbers which go on frequently changing. The telephone number can offer a clue to the dating because a particular telephone number may not be existing at a time when this document was executed. That is a chronological inconsistency. Then further, anachronism or chronism is a feature that is much talked about in forensic science. In fact, it is a chronological inconsistency between the actual happening of some events and their alleged time periods. Just imagine you are reading a story in a novel that includes a caveman who microwaves his dinner, or you are watching a movie based on the story of Jane Austen novel in which the characters text each other instead of writing letters. Can you imagine these things? These out of place circumstances are excellent examples of anachronism. In fact, anachronism is an error of chronology that could be unconscious or unaware. It is a kind that makes audiences to raise their eyebrows or do double takes. Further, sometimes anachronisms are true blunders. Other times they are used intentionally to add humor or to comment on a specific time period in history. Then the application of anachronism in forgery detection. The falsehood of writing will often be detected by some fact posterior to the date to which it bears. And the mention of posterior facts, that is backdating, indicates the first indication of forgery. Then postal cancellation stamp. Any deciphered date in a postal cancellation stamp by the expert under ideally laboratory conditions that is inconsistent with the alleged date of preparation of a letter or a mail document, that is a strong evidence supporting backdating. Then friends, I would discuss the document dating methodology. What are the different approaches that are used to date documents? First of all, there is a static approach, which is based on history that determines when items in or on a document first came into existence. This approach depends on comparison with the reference material. It focuses on the inherent properties of the ink, name, time tags, which generally yield information on the production date of documents, constituents, or their introduction in the market. Then friends, there is dynamic approach. It is based on the actual aging process of documents. This approach compares the relative aging of items of the same composition and in most cases on the same document that could be a multi-page document. These are variable parameters. Then friends, the third approach, which is not that frequently talked about, that is a chronology approach that aims at reconstructing the chronology among documents or ink entries by ordering them in a proper sequence. Differentiation between absolute and relative age of documents is usually made in the literature. Determining the relative age of a document compared to others is equivalent to reconstructing their chronology. Chronological inconsistency or anachronism, if detected, is a strong indication of forgery. And friends, like all other forensic science problems, principle of comparison is a must. For an effective comparison in dating problems too, only similar inks with the same formula should be compared. If the inks being compared are apparently different, their aging curves are bound to be different. Hence, the comparison will be fruitless. Friends, then it is necessary to draw a difference between natural aging and artificial aging, because artificial aging is a tool which is used by forensic scientists to simulate the effects of natural aging, as well as by the forger to do forgery by what we can call another thing, that is a superficial aging. Then natural aging of inks is a time-consuming process, that takes several years to complete and stabilize. The changes that take place have to be studied and monitored regularly during that period. Friends, too long and too difficult to wait and watch for the results of the studies of natural aging. So that's why scientists have to resort to artificial aging. But artificial aging is not as good as the natural aging, because it becomes too difficult to exactly simulate a variety of different conditions that are encountered in the natural aging process, such as airflow, humidity, light, heat, storage conditions, etc. in the laboratory. While evaluating results produced by artificial aging, such limitations must therefore be kept in mind. Then I come to the first dating process, that is called dating typescript and other mechanical processes. Friends, you must be knowing that type styles or fonts of a typewriter have a date when they were first introduced, which becomes a possible mechanism for dating of documents. Then further, different technologies that were used to produce documents, for example, a photocopier or a printer, their launching periods could be known from the industry sources, which too could be used to detect anachronism, leading to detection of forgery or dating, verifying the dates. For example, ink technology was introduced during the late 1970s. So if you happen to come across a document that shows a inkjet printed out in the year 1965, that is unlikely to be genuine. Chronological sequencing of changes that are noticed in documents, for example, mechanical defects in a typewriter, having a damaged typeface, repair or replacement of its damaged parts, could be used as a database for comparison with the question documents. To conclude whether or not they were executed during that particular period. Any inconsistency thereof between the known and the unknown will become self-evident for such examination. Friends, Osborne has quoted an example of typewriter. He reported a judgment that included a Hammond typewriter. These are the wordings of the judge who delivered the judgment. We find that the alleged agreement in the typewritten part thereof was written on a Hammond typewriter, and that the style of type used on the said typewriter or certain characters used in writing the questioned agreement were not manufactured or in use until some years after July 1892. That was the date of the said agreement. So that is inconsistency. That is chronological inconsistency or anachronism. So probably we remember an old story that a lion saw a lamb drinking water at a nearby river. When he asked the lamb, why did you abuse him last year? The lamb promptly replied, sir, how could I have dared to do so when I was not even born last year? Then friends, the next next parameter for dating of documents, next clues those we get for dating the documents, they are from relative sequencing from intersecting ink strokes. It happens while writing a document that writing strokes of first line would cross those of the writing of the second. The inks may be same or different. So homogeneous strokes or heterogeneous strokes. So the sequence in which two lines cross each other often have a dating significance. You see, the interaction between the first and second ink will depend on some key factors. First is the nature of the inks, whether they are water-based or oil-based or some other medium. Second, the time gap between when the first ink is placed on the document and second ink is then used. That will affect the extent to which the first ink has had an opportunity to dry. Then in terms of forensic examination, a third parameter is also useful. That is the time lapse between writing with the inks and the examination being made. So these factors affect the drawing of sequences from ink strokes. Then relative sequencing from intersecting toner and ink strokes. Toner means a printout and then and handwritten document. One method to examine that intersection is by using microscopy to look at the glare or sheen and reflection of the toner. That will be apparent because toner is not reflected within the thickness of the paper. It is a surface, it is at the surface only. Whereas the ink will penetrate through capillaries into the paper. So ink will travel into the thickness of paper, whereas the toner will remain at the surface itself. So it is possible to examine the microtopography of the paper surface, where the groove of the ink line and the toner material intersect each other. We can do it in instrument like scanning electron microscope also, and at high magnification. Requirement is that 3D imaging should be there, and the depth of field should be proper. So that is the laser profilometry. That is a method of looking at the microscopic hills and valleys, crests and troughs. Those are present in a small area of the paper surface. Then friends, another incident may be that stamp pad inks, the rubber stamp impression is there on a document, and there are other media, writing media. It crosses, say, a liquid ink or typewriting or anything else. So interaction between the liquid ink from a stamp pad and other media, such as pen inks and toner, will depend to some extent on the amount of mixing between the first and the second ink. And friends, Raman spectroscopy and HPTLC are have been used with some success to determine the sequences in some instances. And then a difficult problem of sequencing is that of ballpoint ink versus ballpoint ink, especially when both are either blue ballpoint or the black ballpoint. It means homogeneous stones. Perhaps the most difficult but frequently encountered sequencing problem is where two ballpoint pen ink lines cross each other. Microscopic examination can be done, but there is a handicap of optical illusion. Darker stroke will always appear to be on the top. So extreme caution is to be exercised while drawing conclusions for such examination. And friends, another clue from intersection may be the relative dating clues from ink transfer. So when upper and lower documents are in contact with each other and somebody writes with heavy pressure on the top sheet, its indentations could travel through that paper on the second sheet and leave an impression on the second sheet. And in that process, if the second document contains a written writing, some portions of the written writing could be transferred due to what you say that exchange principle from the lower sheet on the back of the top sheets. If such situation is seen, if such ink transfer occurs that can be demonstrated, it shows that the upper sheet was subsequently written over the pre-existing lower written sheet. It means we are able to determine the sequence of writing on the corresponding pages, on the pages in contact with each other. So then friends, I come to the dating by handwriting, most important problem, most important sequence. So can we determine the relative age of handwriting or absolute age of handwriting? It's a question. And it is an accepted fact that the handwriting of a person changes with time. So people normally think that so many variations take place in handwriting, and as such, handwriting cannot be identified. So due to the variation, due to the range of variations, handwriting identification is useless. But this is not. For an expert, natural variation is an asset. And it is exploited, it is often exploited to for the dating significance, because since the handwriting of a person changes with the passage of time, if we have a chronological record of the writings of a person of say long period, say 15-20 years, all the changes in that writing, those are chronologically marked. We know the time period when a particular writing was written, and from this material we can compare the question writing or signature to find out if those variations correspond to a particular time frame, and if such thing happens, then it may be possible to link the question handwriting with a particular time frame from the standards. But one caution is must. We have to see and confirm that the variations within them are within the scope of one and the same writer. That is an important thing to watch. And then friends, further, we can appropriately answer some of the queries in dating by handwriting. For example, if a document was alleged to have been written when the writer was aged either 13 or 18. So if there are sufficient changes during this period, and these changes could be correlated with the known standards, then of course it would be possible to do so. Likewise, then again, a 5-year gap between the age 75 and 80 years of age in a particular writer may reveal a notable deterioration due to old age or illness, especially if it is associated with medical conditions like Parkinson's disease, etc. If we happen to come across the medical record of that person, we can correlate the changes due to that disease. When that disease is developed in his handwriting, so on the basis of that, we could correlate the question and the standard writings leading to the dating significance. Then friends, there are several factors that affect the dating of handwriting. We have to take care. The most difficult part or the most important part in such cases is obtaining reliable handwriting samples of a person written over a period of time. Those bear the dates on which they were written, or the outer cover of notebooks may contain a date which could be related to the age of the person or to the class in which the student was studying. So those becomes the important document for comparison. Then finding specimen documents written in the past, especially several years apart, which actually where the dates or whose date of production can be approximated, that is by no means an easy task to perform. So that is why it is sometimes difficult to date a document from a comparison of its handwriting. Then friends, natural variation of a writer over a specific period of time could be time specific. So if we happen to have dated specimen writings of handwriting samples of a person spread over a period of time, then we can correlate the changes in his handwriting, variations in his handwriting within the extent and range of variation of that person. So that gives us an opportunity to compare them with the questioned handwriting samples. And sometimes if the material is enough and there is inconsistency in after those comparison, we can say that due to this inconsistency, the question document does not belong to that time period which has been purported to have been made. And likewise, the model of signatures of a person may change with the passage of time. There may be slight variation between two different models, or there can be two altogether different models of that person. So by studying the chronological changes in the signature patterns of that person related to a particular time period, we can link a question document, question signature with the similar handwriting sample from the same period, saying that such and such model of the signature existed in his handwriting samples, and as such there is a chronological similarity or there is a chronological inconsistency between them. So similarly, there are opportunities for dating clues from handwriting due to unaware or unconscious lapses in the handwriting of a person. So I hereby quote an example of a contested will which contained written like such and such person took care of me up to my death. That appeared in a contested will. Or instead of using the words taking care of me or took care of or caring for me, there's a difference between these three terms. So if these terms are not used in a proper significance, proper context, then the inconsistency will be revealed from that contested will, leading us to the conclusion that that will has been antedated or backdated. So a careful analysis of the language of a disputed document, other than the will also, sometimes will show quite clearly that it was written after and not before certain incidents or occurrences referred to in the document itself. That's what Osborne stated more than 100 years ago. And then from handwriting, I come to the paper. Constituent materials of the paper to leave a clue for the purpose of dating. Most of you must be knowing that approximate date of introduction of physical components of the paper constituting the paper during manufacture may be known. The dates of introduction of watermarks in paper are often known. There is a history of paper that contains the watermarks in them or wire marks in them. So the manufacturers keeps a record of the changes in watermarks. when a particular watermark was introduced, when it was withdrawn, when it was changed. So that change in the watermark could be that data regarding the watermarks chronology could be had from the paper industry or the particular manufacturer to which the paper belongs. And then friends, the date of using a particular set of pulp fibers, for example, wood cells during paper manufacture is known for history of the paper, known from the history of the paper industry. I know, practically speaking, because I had examined a case of this nature, that wood cells in paper were introduced after the year 1964. So any document that purports to have been prepared before this date could be a forgery. However, one thing must be noted that if a paper is featureless, neither it contains the watermarks nor other things, then so the chances of getting a dating significance from that paper are very, very remote. What can be done only? We can just compare the two papers to watch for their UV fluorescence to say whether it is same or different. Simply we can classify that paper, but that paper may not contain a dating significance at all. Then that is what Osborne stated. Many wills and other documents have been written on paper which it has been conclusively shown was not made until after the date of the fraudulent document. So that is a sure sign of forgery. Then friends, age can be estimated from history of materials that are used for preparation of documents. So we have to have a database of the chronological history of paper. Then what raw materials were used in the paper, when were those used, when they were stopped and changes were made, then loading and sizing chemicals used, then what dyes and pigments are used in the paper. Then there can be a chronological record of changes in composition of inks as well. Some popular manufacturers or some international manufacturers maintain a record of their ink composition, but most of the ink manufacturers don't keep them. Only the branded items, only the typically branded items have a record of their production. So chronological records of changes in the methods of printing, including computerized printing and copier machine, also gives a specific dating clues. And then friends, we can have relative dating clues from indentations of handwriting, for example, in writing pad. So in a writing pad that holds a number of paper sheets bound together, the indentations of the writing of the upper sheet containing date information normally appear on the lower sheet. These indentations could sometimes indicate forgery in case it was found that the lower sheet contains writing alleged to have been written earlier to that of the upper sheet. And then friends, I come to the possibilities of ink dating and what are the hurdles thereof. Perhaps the simplest approach is to determine the nature of the components present in an ink in order to determine whether those components were available at the relevant time when the document was executed. That is a static approach. So in principle, there are two types of ink dating questions. First, when was the ink actually placed on the document? The second, when was the ink of a particular entry placed on the document in a relation to other entries, normally on the same document, but could be on different documents as well. In other words, whether absolute dating or relative dating of ink is asked for. So there are two important types of confusing situation in ink dating. It depends on ink and paper used at that time. Then the manner in which the documents are stored after they have been created. Both have a profound effect on the dating, on the aging patterns. Then dating ink based on the drying process and its extractability. Friends, ink, some of the inks take a lot of time to dry. Normally, simple pen inks, fountain pen inks, or water-based inks, they are quick drying inks. But other inks like ballpoint inks, they take years to dry, several years to dry. So there are gel pen inks also, which contain volatile components that take a long time to evaporate. So this gives us a opportunity to find the aging curve on the basis of which we can have some dating significance. And it's a general phenomena that more the ink has remained on paper, for more time the ink has remained on paper, it would be more difficult to extract. Fresher the ink, easier the extractability. So that is the principle of aging method that was reported by Aginsky, etc. long back. Then friends, there are ink paper interaction and the result thereof that leads to some dating clues. You see, while writing with a particular ink on paper, what happens on the paper after the ink is placed, that is most important. Most volatile components will evaporate fairly rapidly and hence will be lost to the environment, usually to the atmosphere. Some components of the ink will still remain in the paper, but will migrate away from the original site of the ink line by a process of diffusion in which molecules physically move through the solid medium of the paper structure. And some components of the ink are absorbed into the structure of the paper. In these two instances, the ink components do not become attached to or part of the paper, but remain separate from the paper, though closely associated with the structure. Friends, this is the typical ink drying process of ballpoint ink. This photo shows simultaneous ink drying process on paper. The ballpoint pen solvent molecules volatilize, evaporate, some diffuse, migrate and penetrate via absorption and are absorbed by the paper substrate, while gray arrows represent volatilization, black arrows represent diffusion, migration, penetration, absorption and adsorption. So it is a typical ink drying process that has been reported in some of the research paper and books. So then what are the possibilities of ink dating? You see what happens when the ink dries on paper. Some components of the ink will over time become absorbed by the paper fiber, a process that effectively means that these components become attached to and part of the paper itself. The movement of ink components will vary according to many factors, including the particular components actually present in the particular ink. It will depend on the amount of ink deposited, then width of the ink deposited, and it also depends on shape of the written character. The slide that follows shows that if writing is written along the straight line, its diffusion is comparatively less. If a writing makes a circle like the letter O, so its diffusion would be towards all the diameters, all the radiuses. So it will be more. So the solvent concentration may be significantly higher in 1 centimeter area of the loop compared to 1 centimeter area of the straight line. Then friends, let me come to some ink dating methodology that are useful. There are many methods that can be used to compare inks. They can also be used to address some of the ink dating problems. But in the year 2010, there was a paper reported by Eskura and others, which I would discuss in the R&D work also. That's a useful starting point that surveys not only recent developments, but also has a broader historical perspective. It's a must-read paper, so its reference must be noted down for future. So this is a review paper that surveys many of the published methods used in ink dating, both in terms of the analytical techniques and the methodologies by which they are applied. So normally in gel inks, gas chromatography and UV spectroscopy is used. That has been reported in this paper in 2006. Then Aginski, I told you earlier, found that some components of the ink will become less readily extracted the longer that they have remained on the paper. So that is the reported work in 1993 by Aginski that is still relevant. And then friends, it is a simple phenomena reported by Osborne 100 years ago. Fresh and unmatured ink on a purportedly old document reveals fakery. If you happen to come across a document which looks old, say 20 years, 30 years ago, the document was executed, and you happen to find that the ink is still fresh, it has not matured completely, so then it's a sign of forgery. Likewise, symptoms of superficial aging on a document must arouse suspicion. An artificially treated document will almost certainly show suspicious inconsistencies of various parts and should be compared with genuine papers of the date it bears. Some ink dating methods, those are reported in literature. They are tagging of inks, extractability of inks as an indicator of age. Some are based on artificial or accelerated aging technique. Some are based on the study of volatile components, and instrumentation used is synchrotron reflectors, FAR spectroscopy, and in some cases, laser ion desorption mass spectrometry is also useful. So now let me come to the tagging of inks. It was done almost in 1970s or 80s. Till 80s, it was stopped after that. In the early 1970s, some rare earth elements and later special chemicals were added to some inks in order to tag them for identification and dating purposes. These special chemicals can be identified in an ink sample using a combination of thin layer chromatography and UV excitation. These tags, these are included in the ink. They contain its history, production year, and it also allows for identification of its manufacturer. So with the help of those tags, we are able to determine sometimes when a particular ink was manufactured or to which batch a particular ink belongs that has been used on a document. If it is possible, we could do that. Then here is the historical development of certain inks that may be useful to find out chronological inconsistency between the actual and alleged writings. Yes. India carbon banks, these came into being in the almost 618 to 906 AD. Then iron gallotennate inks, then fountain pen inks. Then let me come to ballpoint inks that are more formal here, more in use. So ballpoint inks, I think these are subsequent to almost Second World War. So oil-based ballpoints came in the year 1951, glycol-based in 1951, erasable ballpoint were introduced in 63, and then pressurized ballpoints came in 1968. Likewise, copper phthalocyanine dye in inks was introduced in 1954. Fiber porous tip pens in 1962 or 65. Roller ball pen also have a date, and gel pen inks also have a date. So these are the year of introduction, precisely simplifying. This information is very useful to reveal chronological inconsistency. So then, as I already told you, that extractability of inks as an indicator of age. Basic theory is that the longer the ink has remained on a document, the more difficult it will be to extract. So alternatively, a newly written entry will extract more rapidly. Therefore, the age of the letter should be distinguishable from an older ink entry. Three measuring parameters are discussed on the basis of an aging curve drawn on the basis of extractability, rate of extraction, percentage extraction, and dye ratio. Those are useful for this differentiation of inks. Then let me come to artificial aging or accelerated aging technique. Friends, natural aging, as I told you, takes a long time, so one cannot wait for that long period. So in its absence, artificial aging or accelerated aging is carried out by uh, treating the document, by treating a particular ink with heat or temperature at a particular temperature. So here, nowadays, the main method used by a variety of laboratories is to compare an ink to itself, exposing it to artificial aging and comparing the concentration of volatile compounds of the aged ink with those from that same ink without aging. Concretely, that solvent is phenoxyethanol. This is the main, most of the research centers around phenoxyethanol only. So accelerated aging is a process that is used in many fields of engineering, pharmaceuticals, and material science. This is a process in which certain material or a substance is placed under abnormal conditions, such as intensified heat, in order to determine the effects of long-term use or storage. In many of the commented approaches, question documents or the inks have been exposed to high temperature as well as to light to accelerate their aging process. Then there's a difference between natural aging, artificial aging, and superficial aging. I already told you. Then what are the methods that are based on the study of volatile components? Promising work is surfacing that focuses on dating of inks by study of the volatile components rather than dyes. You see, in ink there are basically three types of chemicals. First of all, dyes, then the vehicle, the solvents, and the resins that generally harden with the passage of time. So, being volatile, the solvents contained in inks contain phenoxyethanol that continues to evaporate with the passage of time for about 2 to 3 years, after which they get stabilized. Thus, their solvent concentration in the ink being examined goes on reducing with time. This technique examines the ink's vehicles, such as phenoxyethanol, the theory being that the difference between a new entry and an older one will be reflected in their solvent concentrations. The method has some limitations in that volatiles are detectable for only a limited period of 2-3 years. After that period, stabilization occurs and evaporation stops. So we can only say that a matured ink is more than 2 to 3 years old. That's what we can do. Earlier or later than this, we cannot say, we cannot distinguish. If it becomes known that the disputed ink entry originally contained phenoxyethanol and the volatiles are not detected at the time of examination, it's a sufficient indication that the ink is more than 2 to 3 years old. Then, friends, there are limitations in the study of volatile components. Volatile, as I already told you, volatile compounds stabilize after a period of 2 to 3 years. If the ink is older than that, it cannot be detected and concluded. And there is one difficulty. This phenoxyethanol can migrate through the paper and it can travel from one sheet of paper to the adjoining sheet when they are stored successively. In the author's experience, these methods are suitable only in a very few cases, and still there is a need to be forensically validated. So hence, in actual practice, they cannot be used for drawing definite conclusions regarding the inks. Then, besides ink and paper, there are some other dating clues like adhesive and gums, those are used, and security threads, those are used for pasting and binding. Then other synthetic materials that is used in the preparation of books, diaries, registers, files, etc. That also contains some useful clues, dating clues. Then other miscellaneous dating clues are available in the form of letterheads or invoices. Some items bear the dates of production at insignificant places. For example, in postal envelopes, there are some information which can lead you to when was this envelope printed, or we can get that information from where it was printed. So Official documents are dated documents such as driving licenses. The dates of revision are often shown on the document. Changes to telephone number, as I told you earlier, gives you clues. Then similarly, the introduction of any official changes may be relevant, such as the use of the PIN codes to address. When were the PIN codes introduced? So if somebody uses them prior to that date, so it could be a forgery. Then let me come down to the review of reported research and development work during the last 10 years. Friends, the first paper is the potential of artificial aging for modeling of natural aging process of ballpoint by Wehrman. This paper was published in the year 2008 in Forensic Science International on artificial aging. Artificial aging has been used to reproduce natural aging processes in an accelerated pace. Question documents were exposed to light or high temperature in a well-defined manner in order to simulate an increased age. This could be used to study the aging processes or to date documents by reproducing their aging curve. Then, but storage conditions, though, in particular, are difficult to simulate as they are dependent on environmental conditions, intensity, dose of light, temperature, airflow, humidity, which cannot be controlled in the natural aging of question documents. The problem therefore lies more in the variety of different conditions a question document has gone through than the aging, rather than in the simulation of such conditions in the lab. Nevertheless, a precise modeling of the natural curves based on artificial aging curves is obtained when performed on the paper. Mathematical transformation of artificial aging curves into modeled natural aging curves results in excellent overlap with data from real natural aging processes. So, but I told you earlier that the artificial aging technique is not suitable for forensic work because it is still to be forensically validated. Now let me come to the very useful paper which I referred earlier. This is by Escura in the year 2010, published in Forensic Science International. Analytical methods for dating modern writing instruments, ink on paper. It is a comprehensive paper containing a review of all the publications till 2009 or 2010. This is a very useful paper. It briefly describes various ink dating methodologies and some other things as well. So let me discuss something therefore. So friends, this is a table that shows experimental methods. Those were developed by different authors and their contribution to the actual approaches in ink dating from the year 1920 till 1971. Then friends, here is a chronology of the different methods of dating inks by changes in the extractability of the ink dyes and colorless non-volatile compounds from the year 1980 to 2005. Then this is the aging curve for a natural aging curve shown in blue and the accelerated aging curve shown in red. Amount of volatile components that evaporates during a natural or accelerated aging process has been mentioned here. Then this is a chronology of ink age evaluation based on the study of volatile components from the year 1982 to the year 2008. And here is a table showing chronology of ink dating based on the degradation suffered by its dyes. The work done from the year 1993 to 2006 has been reported. Then Wehrman has concluded it is now widely accepted that the dating methods based on artificial aging and sequential extraction of dyes are not reliable. Nowadays, the main method used by a variety of laboratories is comparing an ink to itself, I told you earlier. The volatile compounds are not detected after 2 to 3 years. So that is the limitation. Then further, phenoxyethanol has been the most studied compound using the most sophisticated instrumental techniques. Thermal desorption, GCFID or GCMS is useful for the identification and quantification. However, this method has its limitations due to I already told you, volatile compounds stabilize after a period of 2 to 3 years. If the ink is older, it cannot be concluded. And this phenoxyethanol can migrate through the paper from one sheet to paper when they are stored successfully. So, friends, it's important to emphasize that most investigations are centered on the ink of the glycol-based ballpoint pen, and that the only studies from non-ballpoint pen inks are those elaborated for gel inks. So, further, a third way is the study of polymerization of resins. There are very few number of research in this field. Most important and recent are the ones done by Kirsch. However, this is an unexplored area which could give satisfactory results unless its research is very complex. With time, it's expected that the use of non-destructive, greater sensitivity and resolving power techniques will further improve the chemist's ability to resolve the studies in the forensic ink dating field. So, final recommendation for future works Wehrman has concluded are the need for interlaboratory validation of the methods based on the loss of volatile components. According to our latest studies, she has said, the retention time lock mode in GCMS can be used as a really useful tool for the interlaboratory validations. The further study of the kinetics of the resins will time and its use in ink dating. New investigations about resins are more promising, she says, but let us see whether they can also be forensically validated. Now, friends, next paper reported in 2011 by Wehrman is the very useful paper. It is minimum requirements for application of ink dating methods based on solvent solvent analysis in casework. So, inspired by a real investigation involving ink dating, the present paper discusses this particular issue throughout 4 main topics: the aging process, dating methods, validation procedures, and data interpretation. This work presents a wide picture of the ink dating field and also warns about potential shortcomings and also propose some solutions to avoid reporting errors in court. It's a very useful paper, must be gone through by those who are interested to carry out further studies. So this is the formula of the phenoxyethanol molecule that is used in ballpoint inks. Then this is the aging curve for solvent evaporation for different solvents. It is for solvent ethoxyethanol. Then another curve showing the component, the function aging with respect to time of, you see, dipropylene glycol, ethoxyethanol, and phenoxyethanol, the 3 solvents. Then extractability of inks as a function of time. This is the aging curve for that. Then another paper that is being reported is the date ink pilot study. This is an effective methodology for ballpoint pen ink dating in question documents. This has been reported in 2015. And highlights of the paper are development of an ink dating procedure for documents written by ballpoint pens. Again, analysis of phenoxyethanol in ballpoint pen inks by MHS, SPE, ME, GC, and MS. Then he has used the term beta parameter. It is the remaining fraction of the analyte in the system after one equilibration corresponding to the successive extractions, which was considered for modeling a mathematical equation for later ink age dating. This beta parameter measurement was used for modeling a mathematical equation for ink age dating. The study of beta parameter for estimating the absolute age of ink entries, he claims that has shown promising results. But unfortunately, the reported relative error rate of 21% that has been reported is not tolerable. This is the ink dating based on beta parameter. It is the curve he has drawn. So apparently, it's shown that a relative error of 21%. This is for 2-phenoxyethanol, that is common ink solvent. Then another reported work is by Vishal Sharma dating of ballpoint pen writing inks via spectroscoping and multiple linear regression analysis. So what he has done, he has stated that dating of question document is the current work, he says, is focused on the study of dating ink samples by using spectrophotometry technique and multiple regression analysis. A multiple linear regression model has been proposed for the estimation of blue ballpoint pen inks dating by measuring the fading of ink with respect to the time using UV-vis spectrophotometer. But while concluding, he has said that the process of ink dating is very complex, and the scientific community has been voiced across the world about the viability of dating methods. And this, he said, is the initial step for dating study from their group. The technique can further help in developing a dating database which can be used for further dynamic and static dating in forensic cases. He has recommended more research should be done to find out the variables affecting the aging of ink and considering all the variables in the MLR analysis in order to estimate the absolute age of ink for a wide variety of ink samples. And then another useful paper that has been reported is dating inks on paper through chromatographic analysis of volatile compounds, mini review. This has been reported in 2018. It stated that to obtain a chemical fingerprint of ink changes, chromatographic methods have been explored. The aim of this work is to do a review research that provides an overview of chromatographic procedures that allow ink dating on paper through ink pen solvent analysis. And it says the results are encouraging. GCMS and HSGC-FID proved to be promising in the field of ink aging of a question entry, allowing getting information about solvents, chemical changing, and providing a measure of the TSD, time since deposit. Nevertheless, no solvent ink age standard has been reported in forensic science laboratories. Still, this method cannot be utilized for actual casework because it is yet to be forensically validated by the community. Then another paper was reported by almost the same authors, I think, dating documents by chromatographic analysis of dyes present in viscous and liquid inks. The earlier was on solvents, and this is on dyes. So the aim of this work is to develop analytical methodologies that allow for the determination of the time of ink deposition through the characterization of dyes chemical changes. So preliminary chromatography results suggest that it is possible to discriminate a liquid from a viscous ink, as well as distinguishing time since deposition for the viscous inks. From the analysis of chromatograms and spectra, it's possible to obtain qualitative and quantitative chemical information of the different dyes in inks and use this information to use the study of dyes to dating inks. The methodology, he says, under development is promising to discriminate ink types and time since deposition of an ink on a paper. However, again, he has stated that more data must be gathered and evaluated before putting it to an actual use. So then, while concluding, has stated that modeling of natural aging of dyes and solvents from ballpoint inks proved to be a very complex because of the number of factors playing a role, like initial ink deposition, paper substrate, and the storage conditions. Each of these group of factors can be equally varied and is generally unknown in case investigation. That is why these things come in the way of the finding suitable results for forensic analysis. Then another study recently published in the Brazilian Journal of Forensic Sciences relate to blue and black ballpoint pen inks. That is a systematic review for ink characterization and dating analysis. This is a very useful paper. This article aims to provide a comprehensive systematic review of the studies regarding ballpoint ink characterization and dating in the last 10 years. There are several methods, both destructive and non-destructive, which are capable of characterizing and differentiating blue and black ballpoint pens that have shown applicability to the static approach. Regarding the dynamic dating methods, most studied have quantified the loss of 2-phenoxyethanol solvent over time using GCMS or studied the dyes degradation through different approaches. So although ink dating approaches offer relatively good accuracy, there is still more research to be done before they can be put in the actual cases. So table 1, it's a long table. It shows published studies on ink characterization. Too much research has been done. You see how long this table is. Then table 2 shows studies on ink dating by separation and spectrometric techniques. Again, so much research. Then what conclusion he has drawn? The systematic review presented different methods. However, currently only a few answers may be given. This is important. Currently only a few answers may be given regarding ink's age, and most of the performed exams are relative dating methods when it is possible to evaluate two inks and compare their ages. He says the methods improvement and interpretation with the research might provide a possible working protocol in future for the forensic document laboratories and its use. It is also essential to provide forensic experts with proper training. This is more important. This is still more important for everybody. For the analytical methods, data analysis, quality control, and interpretation of evidence. There is a need for proper training and refresher training because most of the experts that are available in forensic laboratories, in forensic document laboratories, they have not got such training so far. Then another useful work, very useful work, is a chapter written by Wehrman in this book, Emerging Technologies for the Analysis of Forensic Traces. This is regarding emerging approaches in the analysis of inks on question documents. This is a very useful paper. So she has investigated various technologies for application to the examination of question documents in a forensic perspective. She has evaluated also. This is a very good chapter, about 12-13 pages. This is worth reading. So you see, I am very much impressed by what she has given here. So this is she has linked the hyperspectral image of an altered figure 4, which was altered with the similar ballpoint pen by correlating with the spectra. Spectra of one ink and the spectra of other ink. Both the inks used were ballpoint pens of similar ink. So she was able to differentiate the two inks that were used to form this figure 4. Rather, I can say that figure 1 was converted into 4 with the similar ink. That could have been the conclusion. So I'm very much impressed by why can't we produce such a sporting evidence in sport of alterations. So this is a summary of document dating possibilities he has given. Time tags approach, then aging, then chronology approach, fluorescent tags, what was the time frame, and what are the main limitations of that method, she has stated here. Then this is my point of view, something. Why can't we do such presentation? I wished and lamented in my entire career we could have provided such a beautiful and convincing evidence in support of our forensic reports regarding proof of alteration in question documents. Hopefully, the coming generation will rise to the occasion and take care to include such methodology within their scope of examination. And friends, now the conclusions drawn by Wehrman in our chapter. You see, this even the examination of documents to detect potential falsifications or counterfeiting does rarely require ink analysis beyond optical comparison. That is what she has recommended. This might be due to the fact that ink analysis rarely allows answering the key forensic questions. It's very useful to highlight differences. However, the fact that two ink entries could not be differentiated does not necessarily mean that the same pen was used. It may also indicate that a particular ink formulation is very common in the market. One can apply as many techniques as possible. Such a result will remain particularly difficult to interpret. Then she has hoped future researchers should now attempt not only to evaluate one method on limited ink samples, but also to compare the different promising approaches using large ink samples sets both to help select and validate efficient and reliable methodologies and to support evidence interpretation for judicial purposes. Finally, she has stated it's important to remind forensic scientists the importance of blind testing their own methodologies to ensure final validity for implementation in forensic practice. Friends, this is a suggestion worth implementation, and hopefully the experts will start working on this suggestion. Friends, the latest paper that is reported on anachronism is by my friend Loganathan Lingan, reported in Arabian journals. So this relates to anachronism in fonts and relative dating of computer printouts. It's a case study. So you see, in the present case study, the traditional methodology of TypeScript matching coupled with an offline digital tool were used in identifying predated documents and disproving the genuineness of the document in question. You see what happened. There was an actual case study that was reported. So, in fact, different font was used to carry out the alteration in a multi-page document. The alteration that were done with the different font, these were examined vis-a-vis the rest of the typewritings. It was found that a particular font that was used in the altered writing, in the new writing, in the subsequent writing, that was not available at the time when that particular font is alleged to have been used. That was a chronological inconsistency which led the expert to believe that it was a subsequent alteration done in the, it was in fact a case of backdating. So now I come to present some reported case studies, actual cases. Those I have collected, some I have collected from the literature, and some our own studies, and some studies of my friends in some labs. So first of all, the most talked about is the Hitler diaries. You see, there is too much that has been written, reported, and contradicted regarding the Hitler diaries. But I have gathered some of the observations of a handwriting expert called Kenneth W. Rendell. So what he has stated is that ultraviolet examination has shown a fluorescent element to the paper, which should not have been present in an old document, and that the bindings of one of the diaries included polyester, which had not been made before 1953. So he stated that the diaries were forged. He later reported that everything looked wrong, including new-looking ink, poor quality paper, and signatures that were terrible renditions of Hitler's. Rendell concluded that the diaries were not particularly good fakes, calling them bad forgeries but a great hoax. He stated that with the exception of imitating Hitler's habit of slanting his handwriting diagonally as he wrote across the page, the forger failed to observe or to imitate the most fundamental characteristics of his handwriting. Then another a very useful case. This case was actually reported by my friend Dr. S.C. Mittal, who retired from CBI CFSL laboratory. A quote from Goa was referred to that laboratory to determine the correct age of the inland letter, because one of the parties contended before the court that the inland letter was a false and fabricated document and was backdated by artificial aging to show it as if it was written and posted in the year 1969, whereas this document was produced in the court in the year 2007. One of the arguments of the defendants was that normally the inland postal stationery issued by the Department of Post has self-printed postal stamp on it, whereas in the present case, the postal stamp was pasted on the inland letter with an adhesive. Now, you see, this is the photograph of the front and back side of the inland letter. You see the worn out condition. Now coming to the examination of the postal stamp. This is a postal stamp of 15 paise showing lady plucking tea leaves. Further, the postal cancellation seal was also deciphered. It is showing some portion of the word gamma, which could be linked to mean Vasco da Gama, to link Vasco da Gama. And date that could be deciphered was 27th October 1969. The experts were able to lay their hands on page 203 of the album, where there was a mention of this stamp along with its date of printing. This stamp was printed on 15th August 1965. So it could have been used after this date. No inconsistency. The date was 9. Very fine. Then experts further tried to investigate the postal rate applicable on 29th October. The date of the posting of this letter to confirm and substantiate the point. A personal inland letter received by one of the experts was examined, where there was clear evidence that postal stationery rates of inland letters was 20 paisa at that time. So this is the tea plucking. This data is available here for tea plucking. Yes, it is available. Then evidence on natural discoloration and fading. So when this inland letter was examined in microscope at different magnifications, so various brown yellow spots were found. So these were symptoms of natural aging. No symptom of artificial aging or superficial aging was detected. Further, the color of the adhesive used for pasting the inland was also shown to have become deep brown, which clearly shows that the inland letter was opened and kept in an open environment condition, exposed to atmosphere for a long period of time. Then further, the study of controlled samples of old postal stationery showing a similar evidence of foxing, that is change of color, was examined. It was found similar. Then genuineness of inland letter established by forensic examination based on those data. Then another case that was reported of a famous manuscript. It was a Satyarth Prakash written by Swami Dayanand. Somebody claimed that it is a actual work written by Swami Dayanand, manuscript written by himself. The manuscript of the book was forwarded to the forensic lab to check its authenticity. On careful examination, it was revealed that the manuscript was written using a ballpoint pen. Historically, it was well known that ballpoint pens were not in existence during the period of time when Swami Dayanand wrote this book. Ballpoint came around the world in the year 1945. Therefore, it was established that the manuscript claimed to be in the original handwriting of Swami Dayanand was proceeds. With the help of revenue stamps. Revenue stamps were examined. Its data was sought from the Nasik Security Press India Security. Revenue stamp was released by them. So on their reply, it was established that some of the revenue stamps were actually printed and issued much later than the date of execution of the receipts. Therefore, it was conclusively established that the receipts under question. Case study, determination of age of a tender document. In another case, a contract for the sale of old junk of aeroplanes was executed between Indian Airlines and a private vendor. During examination of the second page of the contract, experts observed that there's mention of a landline telephone number below the name and signature of the vendor. On checking with the telephone department, it was established that the telephone exchange, which had issued the telephone line mentioned in the contract, was commissioned much later to the vendor than the date of signing the sale agreement. Thus, it was established that the last page of the sale agreement was backdated and substituted, and hence it was a forged document. Another case reported by our Shimla laboratory way back was the verification of the time of preparation of an old horoscope. Friends, Income Tax Department had referred a case to GEQD Shimla wherein an old horoscope of an assessee born in the year 1919 was alleged to have been prepared in the same year, say 1919. The said horoscope was submitted by the applicant in support of proof of his date of birth to claim rebate of senior citizen category, which was contested by the Income Tax Department. After obtaining permission from the department for conducting destructive examination of the paper, in this case, non-destructive examination was not useful. So we try to carry out the destructive examination with the permission of the authorities. A small portion of the paper was cut and got examined from the Pulp and Paper Research Laboratory to know about its constituents. The said laboratory reported that the disputed paper sample contained evidence of the presence of wood cells therein. Perusal of the chronological history of paper manufacturing industry, it was revealed that wood cells were first introduced in the paper around the year 1964. Based on the findings of that lab and chronology of paper constituents, it was concluded that the disputed horoscope could not have been prepared earlier than 1964, contrary to its alleged time of preparation in the year 1919. Friends, another case that has been reported by our Shimla lab was regarding to verification of the date of alteration of old revenue records. You see, a case involving tampering of old land record containing details of Shajra, Nisab and Khevat written in Urdu of Kangra district pertaining to the year 1868 was received in the lab of GEQD Shimla to verify whether or not the disputed portions therein were subsequently added, and if so, the relative period of these additions. The said document was examined in VSC 2000. It was observed that the ink of the original Urdu writing and the suspected edition showed different spectral response to a particular wavelength of light that could be clearly differentiated. Further, the edition was apparently made with a red color ink, which was subsequently covered with a blue ink to match it with the tint of the original black writings on the document. It was further observed that the black ink used to make the suspected alteration and addition had a peculiar shining character that was consistent with the optical properties of an oil-based ballpoint ink, whereas the original Urdu writing was found to have been written in permanent black carbon-based ink with a stub-tipped writing instrument of dip pen category. It was also observed that the writing skill of the suspected edition differed from that of the original writing. Collective consideration of the aforesaid observations led the experts to the opinion that the suspected writings at several places vis-a-vis the original body writings on the same document were subsequent additions, not only with different ink, different pen, but by the different author as well, and at different time, not before the year 1945, when the ballpoint pens were introduced in the world market. So these are some of the photographs of that document. These are the VSC 2000 images. You see the entry mark X3, see the writing instrument that is not consistent with the writing, rest of the writings. Then here is the differentiation of ink. When the ink was obliterated, the red ballpoint ink was obliterated with the blue ballpoint pen ink. Here is the differentiation you see in VSC 2000. Both the inks are having a different fluorescence. So then another case recently, Loganathan's case in fonts design leading to a relative dating of computer. I have already told you the history of this case. So on detailed examination, it was found that the type text comprising the description of property were corresponding to the Comic Sans MS font, whereas those of the rest were corresponding to the Arial font. As per Wikipedia, the Arial font was released in the year 1982 and the Comic Sans MS was released in the year 1994. After the said agreement was allegedly executed in the year 1993. You see how close 1993 and 1994. Expert was able to opine that this alteration was carried out in the year 1990, and this font existed only in the year 1993, and the alteration was done in the year. No, the font existed in the year 1994, was released in the year 1994, whereas the alteration was done in the year 1993. So it was therefore concluded that the type text comprising the description of property corresponding to the Comic Sans MS font at all places was a subsequent addition which could only have been made during or after the year 1994, and certainly not in the year 1993 when the said agreement was purportedly executed. So this is the photograph of that document. You see the top two lines. They are typed with a different typewriter. Everybody can see. See the font. This is different. So then he identified the font of the added writing as the Comic Sans MS. You see, it is a screenshot for the Arial font, screenshot for the Comic Sans font, and then it is a showing differentiating features of letters and numerals. So from the history of the font, he could find out the year of its release, and based on that, he could conclude that it is a subsequent edition. Then it is a summary conclusion from case studies. From the above cases, it becomes evident that question document examiner can give their expert opinion regarding relative age of document. The comparison material required for the purpose include the control sample, certified data of contemporary period, etc. The expert opinion duly supported by data and detailed reasoning can help the court to arrive at a definite conclusion regarding the relative age of documents in facts and circumstances of the case. Then friends, there are difficulties encountered in age determination. You see the production and distribution of writing materials, including the writing instruments, ink refills and cartridges, as well as various types of paper that are easily available in the local market, is often unregulated and unlegislated. Leaving aside some standard manufacturers and brands, the database comprising the chronological history of composition and formulations is not available in the on any website. Then ink analysis and dating comparison is a highly specialized job requiring special multidisciplinary knowledge, equipment, training, and experience. And to the best of my knowledge, very few scientists of laboratories actually undertake this kind of examination. Almost all the forensic document laboratories in India are not yet ready to accept cases requiring ink dating. Most of the chemical tests being destructive in nature, such cases are normally kept out of purview of these labs. And some more difficulties. Then there are limitations of the dating methods, as everybody knows. How old a particular ink is on paper, or to determine the relative age of various entries on the same document. It is difficult to find mainly due to the following reasons: lack of standardization and validation of test methods, lack of standardization of various ink formulas, influence of various circumstances like storage condition on aging behavior, and in the absence of such data, it's not possible to study and correlate various aging parameters of inks from the ink library. Then most of the chemical tests are of destructive nature. Expert rarely gets permission to do so, and relative aging of inks having the same ink formula can only be compared. Then there are further limitations. Then you see, it is relevant to quote here. We are back to the square one. Wilson Harrison stated in 1958, in spite of claims which have been made from time to time, there is no known procedure which can be relied upon to give an absolute age to a writing unless the nature of the ink enables a useful limit to be stated. The most that can be done is to give a rough indication as to whether the writing is fairly recent or not. Then, as stated by Wehrman, there are limitations. The measurement, however precise, would give no indication about the true age of the ink. Then again, she has stated, ink dating is an extremely complex problem. Despite the valuable contributions that have been achieved in this field, no forensically acceptable solution has yet been found. Then again, there are conclusions and suggestions. She stated There is no universal approach to verifying the date of a disputed document, but the various techniques discussed have, under appropriate circumstances, resolved issues about when a document was created. And then these are the conclusions. The fact must be kept in mind that not every document can be dated by laboratory techniques. To establish from the question document itself that it was prepared on a specific date is a rare accomplishment that is possible only under a unique set of circumstances. And far more often, when any dating is possible, the findings are technique and information dependent and therefore must be expressed within a time bracket. And it is such evidence that the document examiner strives to elicit from the conditions and material that surround and make up the document at hand. Friends, that is the end of the lecture, and acknowledgements. Thanks to the Almighty God who made it happen. Thanks to Selin Wehrman who open access to her publications. Thanks to my colleagues MC Joshi from Shimla, Loganathan from Pune, and Dr. S.C. Mittal, retired CFSL CBS scientist from Delhi. Thanks to the organizer, the RRU, for giving me an opportunity to address, and thanks to the participants for patient listening for such a long time. Hopefully they will be benefited from today's presentation. Thanks one and all. We may meet again sometime on the moving wheel of time. Then the references here. You see, some of the references are very important. See at serial number 13. This is a book by Brunel and Crawford, Advances in the Forensic Enhanced Dating Inks. Then there are several references, like I told you 2010 reference by Escura, then Wehrman, and then my own paper is there regarding that has been published in Indian Journal of Criminology and Criminalistics regarding ink dating. Then that paper are already discussed. These are some of the references quoted. These are 115 references in all. So friends, thank you very much. Thanks one and all.
Thank you, sir, for the amazing lecture you gave. Thank you so much for discussing with us the document dating methodologies and reported case studies. So now we are open to taking questions. Participants, if you can unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can even type your questions in the chat section. We'll be taking it one by one.
Yes.
Yes, sir, you can ask your question.
I don't have any question, but I just have my observations to state something to the participants. Good afternoon to all of you, and good afternoon to you, sir, Mohinder Singh ji, for delivering a very illuminating talk, very elaborate talk. We are highly benefited from your talk. What I understood from your talk, that is estimation of absolute age of document is still, you can say, not possible. Then we hope that the future researches may lead us to answer this question, and more researches are needed in this direction. Then a document written in 2 inks at the same time also needs, you can say, age estimation, you can say, with more tactfully and with more research methods. Ink aging is a research problem with a lapse of time. If we carry out a longitudinal study with respect to a single person and take his handwriting of the childhood and write when he is at 75 years or 80 years of age, if we carry out a longitudinal study, then and only then we are able to say something about variation, whether these are natural variations or otherwise. Relative age of handwriting of a person with age, you told us that it is possible, and I have my same views. Then question about signature models. When the model of signatures are changed by a person, it is very difficult proposition to examine and analyze and to reach at the results whether the 2 models have been written by the same person or otherwise. Then opinions in handwriting examination depend upon the experience of the expert, in my view. And it is true that when the experts have different expertise or different, you can say, experiences. I have seen in the courts of law opinions and counter opinions sometimes, but when you have to prove it in the court of law, that is the only aspect that when the judges decide about it. Document examination and ballistic examination is a very difficult job in forensic sciences, as these depend upon the expertise and involves more cross examinations in the court of law. Aging of in process will vary from environment to environment and from country to country. So I hope that we need to carry out such researches in India as has been carried out in Spain with respect to our own environment in different states, in different environmental conditions. Thank you very much, sir, and thanks a lot. I again thank you for delivering this illuminating talk. We are highly benefited. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Gaur.
Thank you, sir. So we have a question from Mona Sharon. She asks, if artificial aging is used to deceive, how can we detect?
Pardon. Please
Yes,
pardon. Can we have a 2 minutes break?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yes. I'll come after 2 minutes. Please wait.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, please. I am back.
Yes, sir. So Mona Sharan asks, if artificial aging is used to deceive, how can we detect it?
Good question. Artificial aging is used to detect. Then it will not be artificial aging. It will be superficial aging instead. Artificial aging is a technique to simulate the natural aging for the purpose of research, whereas superficial aging is the usual method followed by forgers to make a document look older than it is actually there. We have examined it at several cases, and we could conclude that a document was superficially aged. For example, you see insect holes were created deliberately in certain documents. So we came to the conclusion that was not a natural aging process. That was in fact a superficial aging done by that. So you see what happens when artificially aging occurs. You see entire document gets exposed to artificial aging. So there will be consistency in its entire document in entirety. There will be no inconsistency therein. But whereas a superficial aging is taking place, then there will be no consistency in there. So there will be artificialness. So that could be detected. That is the difference between artificial aging and superficial aging. I hope it is clear.
Yes, I think so.
We have a question from Anusha Singh. She says, is there any case that baffled you?
So many times. I don't claim that the cases don't baffle me. Still, I am baffled at the first examination. But
May I say
when I
something?
continue to examine it on different...
May I
Yes,
say
yes, yes,
something
carry on,
about,
please.
as far as
Yes.
baffling of an expert is concerned, every forensic expert is baffled when he is confronted with a new case and which is, you can say, treated to be a difficult case. But baffling does not mean that work should stop. One should be cool-minded, one should be careful enough in examining that, and one should apply every method which is available at his command. So there is no question that expert may be baffled or he may be unable to work or unable to carry out the examination. Though initially things may look like that this is a difficult case, but the solutions are always there. Solutions are always in literature, in your own mind. You examine all of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. God.
Thank you, sir.
Next question. We have a question from Anusha. She says, does forgery comes under civil or criminal cases?
May I say?
Forgery is a criminal offense. But there is no sharp line dividing the civil offense and criminal offense. Sometimes a civil offense too becomes criminal if that involves forgery.
Yes.
We have a question from Naseem. Since SEM is a destructive technique, is there any non-destructive technique to observe surface abnormalities in a question document?
Yes, there are several non-destructive techniques that does not need to destroy the document. So non-destructive examination is carried out in video spectral comparator, under microscope, and several other methods are there. Under high magnification, under microscope, stereo microscope, that by so many methods are there. Video spectral comparator is the instrument which can be used for the non-destructive examination of inks and paper. I hope it's clear.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sir, regarding my previous question itself, you had told that the artificial aging is like a simulated one done in a lab where it is done to age the document faster.
Yeah.
So what if the person, tries to do the same thing and, tries to deceive? That is what I wanted to know. How do you detect it later on? Because when you said superficial aging, that obviously would have a lot of fakeness in it. No, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if the person intentionally wanted to make the document age artificially, like he knows the technique, he's aware of it, and he does it intentionally to deceive someone, how do you detect it later on, sir? Like what chemicals or solvents could you use like that?
Yes. Good question. But that amounts to answering the question, what happens if an expert becomes a forger? So
Yes.
let me say that if expert himself becomes a forger, there are several experts who have become forgers, I know. So it would be difficult to detect. Definitely forgery would be difficult to detect. But a forger will always leave a clue, even if he is an expert. I myself cannot simulate my own signatures. Even if I try it, I could not. I tried my best. I could not simulate the signatures of my guru, Professor Mr. Bilal GQD. I somehow succeeded. Showed it to him that I have forged your signature. He said, "No, Mohinder Singh, you could not." There are
May I,
several. Yes.
may I put it up in other words, sir?
Yeah.
I would say my answer to this question as a biologist would be,
Yeah.
or as a forensic scientist would be,
Yeah.
that whenever any paper is exposed to any temperature or heat conditions,
Yeah.
there would be some sort of observations which can be made from the paper, that is wrinkles, that is, you can
Yes.
say decoloration, or you can say blackening of the paper, or brownish shade of the paper, or some, you can say, tensile strength of the paper. So many
Yeah.
parameters are there which would let us know whether it has been exposed to artificial conditions or it remained under natural environmental conditions.
Yeah.
So both studies can be carried out to find out whether it has been exposed to artificial conditions and or otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, we again have a question from Anusha. She says, aging is fast if document is placed in extreme weather conditions. So how can we distinguish it from an ancient document?
Look here, I would say, what do you mean by extreme weather conditions or climate conditions? These conditions may be that high temperature is there, less humidity is there, or you can say highest humidity is there, or there is, you can say, snow conditions are there, the temperature is minus 45 degrees or so, or the temperature is 48 degrees centigrade or so in warmer climatic conditions and all that. So under all these conditions, let me tell you, the variations which come, those would be different. And as a result of which, as you have stated, the natural processes, they, you can say, differ at extreme high, you can say, temperature conditions, or extreme low temperature conditions and humidity conditions. So in natural environment, when a paper is lying, means it has kept on lying for years together, and it has passed through various environmental conditions with the passage of time. But just exposing to one extreme environment for a short period does create some differences. And those are also, experts are able to study all that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. God.
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any more questions, you can unmute yourself and please ask it.
I think there are no questions, and the participants have understood what Sri Mohinder Singh ji has delivered in this lecture. And I feel, sir, this was excellently, you can say, deliberated. And we are again thankful to you for your kind, benign presence with all of us today. And we hope that you will keep on keeping yourself with us in future as well. Thanks. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thanks,
Thank you
Dr.
very
God.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. That was a very interesting and informative lecture.
Thanks.
Okay. Video.
I now invite Dr. J.R. Gaur, Director, School of Forensic Science and Risk Management, to please present the vote of thanks.
We are all thankful to Sri Mohinder Singh ji and for delivering this talk on behalf of the School of Forensic Sciences and Risk Management at the Rashtriya Raksha University at Lavard, Dahegam, Gandhinagar district at Gujarat. We thank you very much, sir. And we again you can say thank you very much that you delivered this talk at the stipulated time and finish the talk in the stipulated period. Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So with this, we come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, sir, for spending your time and sharing such valuable information with us. We'll be looking forward for more such lectures from you in the future. Thank you, sir.
You are welcome, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Participants, you are requested to fill the feedback forms. Sudhanshu sir will be mailing the link to you. Kindly do submit it as your feedback matters the most so that we can take more such lectures in the future. Thank you.
हो गया बस ये भी करो